So I'm going to go over the exit pass questions on the Trig revision of National 4 work. If you can look at your own solutions, give yourself some feedback, look at if you didn't get the correct answer, look at why you didn't get it correct, and maybe copy out what is the correct answer. So for each of these questions we should have been beginning with the triangles being drawn, and we're basically making use of this here, the SOHCAHTOA, to help us. We're dealing with right angled triangles and angles and side connections, and we've got either a missing side or a missing angle. So when it's a missing side, as in this one here, you're going to name your sides once you've got your triangle drawn. So clearly we've got the right angle marked there, and the side across from the right angle is always the hypotenuse, always the longest side. So if you could mark that. Your other side that you've got, you use the 40-degree angle here to name the other two sides. So across from the 40 would be the opposite side. However, we don't have any, we've not got an X on that side, we've not got any numbers, so I'm just going to leave it blank. But this side here at the bottom where we do have the X, that would therefore be the adjacent side. It's the one that's next to the 40 degree. Now if we then write down our SOHCAHTOA, so we can look at and decide which of the ratios we need, we can clearly see that the two sides that we're dealing with here are the adjacent and the hypotenuse. So I'm looking for an A and an H to represent adjacent and hypotenuse, and that would be this ratio here. So it would be the cos. So I begin this question by saying I'm using the cos. So the cos of the angle is equal to the adjacent over hypotenuse, and that means I can now fill in my angle. Cos of 40 is equal to my adjacent side is my X, and my hypotenuse is 18. So that's the first bit. And now you need to rearrange this so that I get X on its own. So in order to do that, I need to think about how I can get rid of this 18 that's on the bottom. Now that 18 is like dividing by 18, so the way to get rid of a divide by 18 is of course to do the opposite, which is multiply by 18, and we would do that on both sides. And obviously over here when I do that, it cancels, so I'm just left with the fact that I've then got X on its own, and this bit I do on the calculator, so X equals 18 times cos 40, and when I've done that I get the answer of 13.7887, whole load of other figures. I'm rounding to 2 decimal places, so my answer should have been 13.79, and my measurements are in centimetres, and that would be my final answer. So I have to round to 2 decimal places there, and that's it. So that's how you would use the cos ratio to work out your missing side. Second question. This time where the X is actually an angle that you're trying to calculate, but you'd set the question up in the same way, in as much as we do need to identify your sides. So the 17 is obviously the hypotenuse. Relative to that X, this is going to be opposite the X, so that side there would be my opposite side. So what I'm then going to write down is my SOHCAHTOA, and I'm then going to look for which of my ratios uses an opposite and hypotenuse. So I'm looking for an O and an H, so clearly that is this one, which means it would be the sine. So I would be writing down sine of the angle is equal to opposite over hypotenuse, which in this case, this time my angle, I don't have a number for it, but I put in the X, so I'm doing sine X equals 11 over the hypotenuse of 17. Now this time to get to the x, this one is a wee bit more complicated, and this is where when you're working out an angle, you need to remember that actually you've got to use the shift key here, followed by the sine key, and then you would put in the 11/17. Right, that's what you would do on the calculator. Press the shift, press the sine, bring up brackets, use the fraction key. So what you write here though in your working is that x will be equal to sine to the -1 of 11/17, and when we do that on the calculator you end up with 40.3202, whole of the other digits, and remember this is an angle, so this final, and you had to round to 1 decimal place here, so that would be 40.3, and put in a degrees for my angle. So no matter whether it's a sine, cos or a tan that you do, if it's an angle you're working out, you will have an expression where you've got sine, cos or tan equals an actual value here, so you've got both numbers on your fraction. When that happens, you need to use to get to what's called the inverse sine or cos or tan, depending on which ratio, and in order to do that you're going to press the shift followed by sine, cos or tan. So that's what you do when it's an angle. So number 3, we're back to looking at one where it's a side that we need to work out. So clearly across from my right angle there is the hypotenuse. I don't have the hypotenuse, not trying to find it, so I'm not going to mark on my side. So I now need to use this other 18 to get the fact that that 20 is therefore opposite to the 18, and my x would therefore be adjacent. So when I write down my SOHCAHTOA to see which two sides are being used here, we're looking at O for opposite, A for adjacent. So the one that's using opposite and adjacent would be the tan ratio. So you'd be doing tan of the angle equals opposite over adjacent, filling in your numbers. So this time you are back to having an angle size. So we've got tan 18 equals, my opposite is 20 and my adjacent is x. Now I need to be able to get that x on its own, and clearly at the moment it's on the bottom of a fraction, so I need to remove the fraction, and the way to do that, I'm just going to write that line down again. So I've got tan 18 equals 20 over x. What I do on each side to to get rid of the x from the bottom is I need to multiply. So it's a wee bit more complicated here. So when I multiply by x, it cancels out on that side. So now what I'm left with is x times by tan 18 equals 20. And I now need to be able to get rid of this times by tan 18. So the opposite of times is to do a divide. So you end up with this one is 20 divided by tan 18. You are actually dividing both sides by tan 18. So if you divide on this side, it will cancel out, and you're dividing by tan 18 over here. And that's what you'd write at the bottom. Do that on the calculator and you will get x equals 61.5536, whole of the other digits, and that becomes 61.55 centimetres. So a wee bit more complicated, that one, because the x was on the bottom, so it involved two processes to get down to the x equals. It wasn't just as straightforward as saying, oh, it's the number times the tan or the cos. You'll notice it's essentially that the x and the tan 18 have swapped places when you get one like this. So our second bottom line of working became x equals 20 over tan 18, so it's really just that they have swapped place. So give yourself feedback, look at where your errors were, and copy down any correct solutions.